Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Engineering Unfiltered YouTube channel. In this video, I'll be talking about behavioral interviews. Behavioral interviews are an important part of any of the product company's interview process. They are generally the second last or last round of the interview process, and they are sometimes also asked by any consultancies companies. So I'll be covering the interview process in depth today, covering why and how to deal with this kind of interview and why these are important and what the interviewer is looking into you when they are taking this kind of interview. So let's get started. The first thing is what is behavioral interview? So in a behavioral interview, there are certain things which an interviewer want to access in a candidate. It could be accessing approach towards working in a team, accessing leadership skill, communication skill, mentorship skills, even managing conflict, or in general your personality check. This may vary depending on the role you are applying in. Suppose you are applying for a junior level or mid junior level position, then they might not ask you questions related to leadership skills. They might ask you questions related to how you work in team. Do you have any examples wherein you have created smaller impact, maybe worked on a feature and took it into production? So those kind of questions can be for a junior to mid junior position. But as soon as you move into a senior position role, the type of question will start changing. They'll start asking more about your leadership skills, some of the examples of your leadership skills, how you work in team, how you mentor your colleagues, etc. So it may vary depending on this role or level you are applying for a job, right? Suppose we consider all of it all together. So in an interview, why they are actually asking it is also a concern that we have to look into in order to cater it better. So you might look it as just another interview which you will crack, but it's not generally a case. Uh, you have to be really prepared to in order to excel these interviews because your approach towards working in a team or a leadership skill they want to know in advance. Why they want to know in advance is because they want to know how you will work in a team when you are actually landing in the company. They have to have some examples of the situation of how have you dealt with it in your past companies or your past experiences. Suppose you're not able to tell them some concrete example, then it's an unknown to them. They don't know if tomorrow in the company, if certain cases arises, how you are going to behave in those situations. So they're trying to access your critical thinking skills, your leadership skills well in advance, so that they know, or at least they'll have an idea how you will be performing or how you'll be acting in those kind of scenarios. Your communication skills becomes really important because even though you might have some cases that you have led a team very in a very well manner, but if you are not able to articulate in the interview, you're not going to make an impact in at least in that interview because they might just think that you're making up something, right? Your mentoring skills are also becomes really important and they have to access it because when you work in a team you will have often mix of seniors and juniors. So how you actually work with seniors to um, maybe come up with a solution or an architecture, but also at the same time how you are upskilling your juniors, how you are mentoring them. Even it could apply not just for the juniors, but also at the similar line or the same level, right? So they want to have some examples of the cases where you have shown that skill, your conflict management skill, because often or not you will be working with clients or the project managers and your team. You have to balance them, right? So in a case that management is asking you for some unreasonable requirements or in a unreasonable timeline which you think your team will be very burdened to, right? So in those cases, how you have managed conflict? Because tomorrow, if you land in the company clearing that interview, they want to know how you will actually behave in those sort of cases. Your personality check in general will be accessed towards the interview. I think the interviewer is going to know your personality by the end of interview for sure. Because either you are having great examples, you are having good examples, or you are having some makeup stories. So everything will be accessed by the interviewer, right? So let's move on to the next one, which is why the behavioral interview is important. I think I partially covered it in the previous slide itself, um, and I'll reiterate it over here because as an interviewer, I want to look at uh, how you will work in team when you join that, how you will lead the team if you are joining as a senior developer. I want to know how you're going to lead the team. What are the examples that you can set? Are you a person who leads by example, who is willing to mentor or upskill the people? Do you have a rude behavior, or are a, or anything sort like that, right? Your behavior when things are not going well, your behavior when things are going well, all those things has to be catered because remember, you're not always going to have good journeys or bad journeys. This is a mix of ups and downs. So I have to, as an interviewer, check how you're going to behave in those situations. The idea is having some examples or some expectations from the candidate um, before they join about how they are going to behave. Every company has also some sort of culture. So, based on your past experiences, the way you deal with it, are you suitable for the culture of the company that we are working in? If it's a culture fit, well and good. If not, then we have to reconsider it, right? So we are also looking at a culture fit as an interviewer, and are you a culture fit or not? Your past experiences of leading any team, working with a team, making some impact, all those matters in the interview. Moving into the next one, what are kind of questions that you can be asked in the interview? Some of the very commonly asked questions are, tell me about a situation where you have grown a team, or tell me about an example where you have made some impact, or an example of mentoring juniors, or how do you manage conflict with managers, and how do you handle it? What are your approaches while working in a team from scratch? So those are mix of questions when you see it all together, because I didn't wanted to make it just for a junior or senior. If it's a mix of both, right? Now, if I'm interviewing a senior engineer, then I want to know how he'll be. Let's say there's a new project altogether, and he has to create a team from scratch. So this first question becomes really important to in that scenario. Tell me about a situation where you have grown a team. When I say you have grown a team, it doesn't mean that you are upskilling by giving it by sessions, hand holding them all together. No, it's more about understanding the team needs, how you have making the impact, how you have set up the process. So any new joiners who joins the team is is ready to onboard, or you have an onboarding process, for example, in place. You have coding standards in place. Your tech stack is well chosen based on your team and the customer needs. Uh, your team is happy doing work. All those things is like growing a team, right? It's not that delivering on time. That's one part of it for sure. But keeping all the consideration in place. When you do answer it, for example, I can give an example of I was working on a smaller feature where I have to create a smaller team. There were some team, some of them were good in the tech stack we were using, some of them were not very good in that. So what we did is we set up a process, knowledge KT sessions, an onboarding session. We chosen a stack which suits for other good learning environment. People are ready to fail. Code reviews, approaches, pipelines in place. Onboarding If anyone leaves the team, joins a new team, we have set up an onboarding process for the team. All those things, considering a full example, it's like the reason you are doing it, the things you did, and the impact you created out of it, and the learnings out of it. If it's gone well, not gone well, all those things has to be considered. So giving a story out of it will make it more relatable. uh, could be telling me a situation where you have created an impact. Maybe you can give an example of a feature or a bug, very big bug, which was causing a lot of slowness or cost. Maybe working on that and fixing it and improving the business overall. So giving a situation why this was a problem, what did you do to solve that problem, and eventually what is the impact that you created. How do you mentor juniors? Do you like work together, do a pair programming setup, or do you in general review their code? Do you lead by example that this is C, this is how it should be done? Working with them, showing them how things should be done, or or in general your way of mentoring it, right? Uh, or a situation with a conflict of management. You will have some conflict sometime. Maybe let's say even if you don't have it, um, suppose how will you manage in those situations, right? If you had a conflict, then it becomes an ideal case that we can give a real example. But if you don't have it, then actually you'll have to make it a scenario. Consider a case wherein you don't have a conflict with the manager or anybody. Then you will have to prepare a story saying that if I would have a conflict, I would react it like that. So you can choose to be honest. You can choose to be just creating a story and telling in the interview, but it overall tells your thought process to the interviewer. It could be a makeup story also, but it has to be in a way that this is how I should have reacted, right? And your approaches towards working in a team. Do you like? How do you like working with a team? And do you like to onboard, upskill people while working in a team? Do you like to work under the processes? Do you like to experiment? Do you like learning environment, challenging environment, etc., etc.? So all those things. So when you see these kind of examples and going to the answer set of it, we need some proper approach to answer these questions, because every time you make up a story or you're telling a real story, you have to have a way of telling it so that the message gets conveyed properly. And for that, what we have a method called star interview method, or in general, star is a very good pattern in order to tell a story, not just in an interview, but overall, it's a very effective way of telling your stories. STAR stand for situational, task, action, and result. So what you do is you first talk about a situation wherein you had a problem or a case, right? So describe the situation or issue you need to solve. So describing a problem will actually set up the interviewer that this is the problem that they're going to solve. And then comes to the next section, which is task. Describe what task you needed to do to solve the issue and why do you need to do that. So now you describe the action item that you have taken or the task you will take in order to mitigate the situation. And then your action. Explain the action you took and how you did it. So in the previous one, you list down the task that you needed to, and in the next one, you are actually saying that what are the actions that you took, how it has gone, and then similarly, the next one will be the result. What happened eventually? Describe the results and impact you of your effort and many benefits realized. Right. So you describe what happened when we created those tasks, put in on action items, and what happened with uh, these things, right? Suppose if I have to give you one example. So let's say your website was very slow, right? So you state this problem that my website is really slow. People get to it and they leave it because it's very slow. So our sales are going down. So what we did is we identified the problem. Now the task action item which we did is we had some people who were experts in the website development and in the front end section. So we took them. Then we identified some of the issues about the bundle size, um, about about the current code structure that we have, which makes it really slow. We listed down some of the action item, and then we worked with the team to resolve that. We pushed them one by one, incrementally solving each problem one by one. And by doing it for a couple of weeks, we were able to increase the performance by x percentage, let's say 50% or 60%. We were able to improve the performance by this much of percentage. So in this way, I have given a situation, task, action, and the result. So this way, I'm clearly stating everything to my interviewer, and he can also or she can also relate to the story end to end. This gives a better impact when you present it, right? Next one will be how to prepare for the interview. I already talked about the star method, that any story, anything which you are telling, if it's in a structured method like star method, it would give you a very good impact. Generally, the art of storytelling itself is a star method, right? If you're a really good storyteller, you generally don't need to remember star all the time. You by default start with a situation, go to task, action, and the result. So this in general should happen in your daily life work. Not only for the interview, but in general, this is a very good practice to follow. And you have to prepare examples for some of the cases. You have to have at least 4 to 5 examples of different situations. You can come up, the questions can be aligned in different ways, but they may be asking the same thing. So at least you'll have to have 4 or 5 examples before the interview. This has to be prepared a couple of days well in advance before you actually land onto the interview. Why? Because recalling it in the actual interview, you might have done it, you might recall it, you might not recall it, you might recall it, but not in very well structured manner. So if you can come up with some really good examples way before the interview, it keeps you prepared for the interview and giving the examples in star method or a structured method. Refresh your memory you will do when you prepare. For example, come up with stories. So try to tell stories to your friend, yourself, about what you did, how you did, and what are the impact it created. It prepare example on different lines. Some of the example could be on leadership line. Some of the example could be on mentoring line, and so on. So the examples that you have seen, try to create some examples according to those, and work on your communication skill. If you are a good communicator, you will be able to excel the interview easily with the stories that you come up. If you follow the approach, your communication becomes the key here. Even though you had a good example, but you are not able to articulate it in a structured manner, you may not do well. So work on your communication skill. Understand what is being asked and answer on those lines, right? This is really important, because interviewer may ask, let's say, first question asking, um, tell me about an example where you have grown a team, and you may start answering on mentorship line, that I have mentored a person who was new to the team, and I worked with them, and eventually he was doing really well. But the interviewer was not asking that. He was asking about a team that you worked in, right? So if you don't have an example, state it. Say, I don't have an example wherein I have grown a team. I've led a feature of a smaller team, let's say 2 or 3, but I don't have that big example. Rather, I have an example where I've mentored a couple of people in the team. So if you don't have an example, clearly say that, or else come up with the stories well in advance, because you don't have example and you don't want to mess up in the interview, right? So answer in the lines, because they have specific agenda points to note down on. So if you give answers on a different line, then it's a mess, right? They won't be able to evaluate you on those lines, right? They have a set of pointers to actually rate you on. So I'll suggest you try to answer on those lines. If you don't have answer, state it clearly. They will only say that okay, this I cannot map because the candidate does not have any examples, but it won't practically uh, n- navigate your conversation in negative manner, which can happen if you answer in a wrong line. So clarify the questions. Ask the interviewer that this is what you are trying to ask, and this is my understanding, and this is why I'm answering these questions, right? So don't deviate from the question. Okay. And also don't try to come up with the makeup stories during the interview. You can come up with the stories, that's no problem, but prepare in advance. If you try to come up with the stories in interview, you may do good, you may not do good. It's all depends. So preparation is the key, right? Um, if you fumble in interview, they'll get to know that you're making up those stories and you're not really prepared for it, or you have not done it in the past, but you're just saying it. They'll catch you. Okay, so don't try to be over smart. Stick to the honesty as much as you could. I'm not saying you become honest for 100% interview process. That may not be possible for behavioral interview all the time, right? With that, I would say thank you and all the best for your upcoming questions. If anything is not clear, do ask in the comment section. I would request you to please subscribe to the channel so that it gives us motivation to keep doing this work. That's all for the video. Thank you all and all the best.